This is not a video, it's just an audio podcast, so you can, pick your nose, do whatever you want. But anyway, Dave, leave that in if you want. I don't care. And here we go. Hey, and welcome back to another episode, a very special episode of the Who Dat Jedi podcast, broadcasting from all points in the New Orleans metro area. As always, I am Aaron Swoboda, and with me is Dave Glado and Fredo Narvez.
Hello.
I got your last name right, Fredo.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Yeah.
I haven't said your last name in a long time. It's like, I think Swoboda is bad enough. Narvez always stumbles on me, but
that's why I'm always leery when you go for the full name intro, because I'm like, will he get it right? Will he get it right? Almost.
I am too. There are many. I was in a band for many years, and there is nothing more frightening than, and I was the singer. There's nothing more frightening than when you're going along. It's like, I don't know what the next words are. I don't know what the next words are. I don't know what the next verse is. And then it's like just at that very last second, it's like all the words just kind of barf out. So yeah, but that's the same way I feel when I'm saying your last name, Fredo.
I appreciate that.
But we do have a special guest. You're hearing a different voice in the podcast if you're a normal listener. But our very special guest tonight on this episode is Brittany N. Williams. And I do have to say you spell it correctly.
Yes, like the province in France. Yes.
Yeah, I made the mistake of misspelling my wife's name only once, the very first time. She corrected me. So anyway, but Brittany N. Williams, a New Orleans-based actor and writer who has performed in a wide range of stage productions in Hong Kong, London, New York, Washington, and right here in NOLA. She's a regular contributor to the Black Nerd Problems website, which tackles pop culture from a more diverse group of minds. And most relevant for this podcast, she is a giant Star Wars fan and has a story in the forthcoming Star Wars short story collection. And I am giddy about this. From a certain point of view, The Empire Strikes Back. Welcome, Brittany, to our podcast.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Happy to be here.
So before Dave reached out to you, did you know that there was a Star Wars podcast in the New Orleans area?
I did not. I knew that there had to be like a good number of Star Wars people here because, of course, like the crew of Chewbacca's and everything. But I did not know there was a podcast. And as soon as I heard, I was like, oh, well, looks like I know where I'm going to show up.
There we go. Yeah, we're the best kept secret in town. That's right.
Yes.
But so we're, actually we're going to be not talking about a whole lot about the upcoming book. We got other things to talk to you about because you're going to come back later and talk to us about the book, right?
Yes. Everything is super secret still, so can't spill the beans.
And so go get some vodka or something, and maybe we can get it out of you a little later.
And then they cut my story from the anthology. Oh.
So I think I told you this on Twitter actually, because you were geeking out over the fact that you have a Wikipedia entry.
Yes. So it's not yet, but it's coming. It's gonna. Oh gosh, I'm so excited.
So I worked for Google for a time, and we got to work at Lucasfilm for a day because they made the switch to Google Apps. And what Google did was send people to, help people figure out Gmail. And my boss was like, "Do you want to go?" I'm like, So I went to, and actually they asked me, do you want to go to the ranch or do you want to go to the one in San Francisco? And I chose the one in San Francisco, but I don't really know. I don't know. But anyway, it was one of those things. They were right in the production of Rogue One.
Oh,
and so this is all of ILM, and first of all, we have to be escorted to go to the bathroom. And as we're walking through the halls, you're seeing they're just everything. Yeah. Your head's on a swivel. Well, anyway, this guy sat down next to me, needed help with Gmail, and we're not supposed to look at their computer unless they offer it to us. Well, this guy offered me his computer, opened it up, and it said Rogue One production crew. And I'm just like, I want to ask you what you do, but I can't. So So all the secrecy, yeah, we had to be
Yeah.
silent about it for a while. It was horrible.
Yeah, I know some other folks who work with Star Wars, and like the signing NDAs and like getting, if you do get like a preview of stuff, like it's just a lot. It's a lot. They are serious about their secrets, but it's for the best, because then when the stuff actually comes out, it's like you don't have all these spoilers, and you can really go at it and see it with fresh eyes, which is I really appreciate as a fan.
So have you been out to San Francisco and to anything, or?
No, I've been to Batu in California, the Galaxy's Edge.
Right on.
I actually got to go at the end of February, so right before everything shut down.
That's when I went.
Yeah.
I went to Orlando though.
Okay. Yeah. It's really amazing, and I got to ride on the flight of the Falcon and Rise of the Resistance, which is honestly the best ride I have ever been on in my life. Like,
the dagger is going into my heart because I was supposed to go in May. I was supposed to go in May and it got canceled. Thanks COVID, but no, it's okay.
No, well, I didn't get to ride that one either, so I'm also hurting over here.
It's like, but they're not going anywhere. They're not going anywhere. It's going to come back. Everything's going to be open again, and y'all are going to get to go, and it's going to be amazing.
That's true.
That's right. That's right.
And they'll have worked all the bugs out, so it'll be like even more fantastic.
Yeah, so we can show up at 5 a.m. to get in a virtual queue and have the internet break. So, well, cool. Well, like so, little chit chat here, but as we talked earlier, we're going to skip news for today because we got a lot of things to ask Brittany, but we are not going to skip trivia because Dave and Fredo and I have to make up for the debacle from Dave's daughter beating us all. And it's always fun to have our guests do a little Star Wars trivia as well.
All right.
All right. So we will start with I'll start with Fredo. So I'm going to let Brittany get a little nervous here.
Ooh, right.
All right, so Fredo, who pilots the stolen Imperial shuttle away from the Rebel fleet?
Whoa.
I know, that made me go, what? Who pilots the stolen Imperial shuttle away from the Rebel fleet?
Yeah, I can hear Olivia in the background telling me the right answer. I believe it is Han Solo.
It is Han Solo.
I had to think about that one for a moment, like which movie, what's the context, and then it's Han and Chewie.
So, now if they're leaving the Rebel fleet, I don't know. I was thinking they're in the Battle of the Death Star. Okay, God.
No,
man, I'm losing all sorts of cred. Okay.
See, now Chewie's flying it later because he's like fly casual,
right?
And I love that. It's that there was a McClunky that Chewie was swearing at, Han, saying, "What the F does that mean?" All right, so we'll go to Brittany now.
Oof.
Okay. So, who's startled by a pair of large yellow eyes that flash open outside the Falcon's cockpit window?
Oh, Leia.
That is Princess Leia. Yes, ma'am. Ding, 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 ding. There we go.
Ding, 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 ding. Woo!
One of the best lines in The Empire Strikes Back is C-3PO, though, saying "beastly things, shoo, shoo." That's one of my favorites. All right, Dave. Who expresses either joy or frustration with a saliva-spewing flap of his prodigious cheeks? Man, those are big words. Who expresses either joy or frustration with a saliva-spewing flap of his prodigious cheeks?
I'm thinking Jabba. He seems a little phlegmy, but no.
Lucy knows the answer.
Think the other. Yeah, think the other end of the saga.
Yeah.
Don't think the end.
I'll give you a hint. Flash Gordon. Yeah. Boss Nass.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh well.
That is seared into my memory. I can't forget that.
No.
All right. So the one I first looked at on my card was, what vehicle does Darth Maul pilot over a steep cliff face? and that's like it's a speeder bike thing, right? So it's actually the Sith speeder or something, I think. I just flipped this over and looked at it, and I saw Lando Calrissian. What? No. That okay. No, it is a Sith speeder. Yes, I am correct. Ding, ding, ding. Right on. I have that somewhere in my Star Wars room. But yeah, cool. All right. Well, we all survived trivia.
Yay!
And intruders are invading Dave's house. I hear Lucy in the background.
I think they're your dogs.
No, that's actually my. That's my.
Oh,
dog.
Okay.
That's your dog.
Sorry.
We all have dogs
Every,
here. It's
right?
all good.
So what kind of dog do you got, Brittany?
I have 3. So I have a lab shepherd mix, who looks like a black German shepherd named Jasmine. I have what we think is a blue heeler miniature pinscher mix, named Stella, and then what we think might be a beagle corgi mix named Luna.
So named Luna, really? All right. Well,
Yeah.
so we've got a German Shepherd, a purebred German Shepherd named Ellie.
Mhm.
We have a Shepherd Lab mix named Josie, and then we have what we just think is a Muppet. She looks like a miniature sheep, and her name is Luna as well. So yeah,
It's such a good dog name.
it is, and it matches her personality perfectly. And Dave has Lucy, the German Shepherd. So we know her quite well. She's a sweetheart.
Yeah. Oh.
So
Dogs
a
are the
beagle corgi. So the a borgie. Okay.
Right.
So anyway.
Yeah.
All right. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, they're all rescues. So it's like we don't quite know what they are. It's just like kind of gauging it and listening to people. So like, that looks like a maybe that's a So
well, cool.
That's the right way to do it.
Yeah.
Again, thank you for being on the show. We're so very excited, and it's so very cool to have somebody in the New Orleans area who's obviously a big Star Wars fan, but going to be working on a very important Star Wars project. So that is very, very cool.
There's actually 3 Star Wars writers in New Orleans. There's myself, Claudia Gray, and Daniel Jose Older.
She's in New Orleans?
Yep.
We had no idea Claudia lived here.
Yep.
Well, breaking news on the podcast. I think we might have to after this book comes out, because y'all are writing in that book, right? All 3?
No, Claudia is not.
Okay, well we'll still involve her, but we can. Because maybe restrictions will be lifted a little bit. We can all meet at a bar and put a microphone in the middle and and talk about some things. So, but, well, that's awesome. I did not know that Claudia Gray was here. So cool. Well, Dave, I'm going to pass it on to you. You want to get us rolling on this conversation tonight?
Yeah,
I do.
And then I do want to later.
I want to ask just like the one. First of all, congrats on the awesome gig. We can't really ask you about the project yet, and we're gonna save that for a future episode. But I did want to ask you what the process has been like for you, and like, are you over the moon? Has it been challenging? Like, what has the process just been like for you personally?
Well, yes to both of those things. I am extremely excited, and it's difficult because I love Star Wars, and I know there are so many people who love Star Wars just as much and more than I do. So it's a lot of like responsibility to have, because it's like, I get the chance to like basically take my action figures and do whatever I want with them. But this is also for all the other fans, so I don't go into it lightly. And so it's really exciting, and it's also a little bit terrifying. The internet is an interesting place to navigate as a Star Wars writer. So that's going to be fun.
That was a very political way of putting that, Brittany. Good job. Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes. But I'm also like super excited to for the book to be out there in the world. I'm excited to read it because I have no idea what anybody else is doing. So
right.
Yeah, it's all the good things and all of the nerve-wracking things at the same time.
So what did you think of the first book that came out?
I like the first book. There's some stories that I like better than others. When the book first came out, I was still living in New York, so I got to go to the one of the launch events they had at New York Comic Con. So they did like a live reading of the There Is Another Story.
Oh, the Yoda one.
Yeah, and that was my favorite
because
cool. I've always wanted like Leia to have more to do. So that was really fun. And it's just so interesting to have all these like background characters get extra, or like to see it through their eyes, because the Star Wars world that we see on film it hints at something that's so much bigger and we never get to know it. So, and then just to have like 40, technically I think 41, but to have like all of these writers come together to write all of these stories and so many different voices, everybody just brought their own like flavor to it. And I think that's when Star Wars is at its best, when people can bring a bit of themselves to it and like their own experience and their fan-ishness to the world and the work. And I've really liked it.
And I like that point that you made, that it's a little bit like working on one of the movies, because everybody has a very specific job. And you're not going to see what everyone else is doing until that finished product rolls out.
Well, and also to another point, it is, and I know this is not the topic of tonight's podcast, but it's kind of like, the band I was in, we recorded a CD, and it's like, who cares if anybody likes this CD or not? It's just, we'll sell it at gigs. But when it's the Eagles, and it's like they have the top Hotel California, it's like, ugh, and you have a bazillion fans. That has got to be,
it's kind of like being an Eagles cover band. So it's like you're like going into this thing that already exists and that people love, and you're kind of like putting your own twist on it without going too off the rails. But you don't want to show up and just be like, we're an Eagles cover band and we're gonna play you some Creed, and that's not
right. Not be a swerve and a half, right?
Like you're gonna have a bad time.
I would agree with that. And I don't mean to disparage Creed unnecessarily, but I think an Eagles fan would probably have a bad time listening to Creed. So you also contribute to Black Nerd Problems. That's in your bio. I went and I checked it out. It seems like a really cool website.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about them and what they're trying to do over there?
Yeah. So Black Nerd Problems is like a nerd news review pop culture website, and it's geared towards the perspective of people of color. It started as only Black writers, but we've expanded to other people of color. And it basically started because our two co-founders, a writer named William Evans and another writer named Omar Holman, they were, of course, nerds and like fans of all these video games and comic books and everything. And as they would talk to each other, they'd be like, yeah, well, and how in like The Walking Dead, all the Black people die. And it's, or like in every horror movie, all the Black people die, or like you don't really see yourself reflected in this media that you love so much. But we weren't seeing the bigger named pop culture sites kind of handling those topics. So they created Black Nerd Problems, and as a space where we could talk about, what we encounter as fans of color, as queer fans who are engaging with the same media that we love, that we don't see talked about by other people. So it's really great. We do comic book reviews, movie reviews, video game reviews. Tomorrow, I'm actually doing an Instagram live where I talk about the Disney classic Treasure Planet and why it flopped. Right.
I love that movie.
Yes. We love it, but it did not recoup its budget. So
it did not. No. No. I grew up with Treasure Island as a kid, loving it. I love Treasure Planet as a movie. It's got Robin Williams in it. I think that's Robin Williams.
No, it has Martin Short. Martin Short.
Thank you.
Kind of
Thank
like
you. He was
Martin
doing Robin
Short
Williams.
skirting the line of Robin Williams.
Yeah. But it was really, really pretty, really awesome
Yes.
movie, and just nobody went to see it. So.
Yep. Nope. Barely. So yeah. So we cover all kinds of things. We do book reviews, everything. It's a great site full of some really amazing writers and people who have fantastic analysis. And yeah, I want everybody to go read all the articles on the site. So.
Have they been hinting at you doing more Star Wars content for them since the big announcement?
No, not really. I can only say like write so much Star Wars stuff because I don't want it to be a conflict of interest. And
right.
Yeah, sure. So it's like a gift and a curse. But we all what was the last Star Wars thing I did write is another writer and we did a piece on it was an open letter to the Jedi Council slandering them for doing what they did to Ahsoka Tano because that was ridiculous and they're stupid. So that was like, and it was a fun piece to write where we just kind of talk trash about the Jedi Council because they were the worst. They were honestly the worst.
The Clone Wars really did. They really did change your perspective on the Jedi Council and just how inept they were. Honestly, you're right.
They deserved it every bit, every single line.
So. That's funny too because the conversation has changed so much over time. Because I think when the movies first came out, people were just kind of like, "Well, that's a bummer," but what are you gonna do? And over time, people have really come to feel like, man, the council really screwed things up, didn't they?
Yeah.
And yeah.
They had so much potential ruined so fast.
We all love Ahsoka on this show, so we're big Ahsoka fans.
The best. She's so amazing. I actually have 2 Ahsoka Funko Pops. I have the young Ahsoka with her 2 green lightsabers, and then adult Rebels Ahsoka with her 2 white lightsabers because she's also fantastic. And then we're gonna get Ahsoka in The Mandalorian. So
they actually really elevated that character in this last season of Clone Wars. And elevated to the same level of Obi-Wan, Anakin, the big Jedi that we all grew up knowing, because in the Clone Wars, the first 6 seasons, I suppose, she was still, she was main character, but still just a notch below. But then they really elevated her, and she's a fantastic character.
She's so great.
So speaking of black nerd problems, when we're in addition to being pro Ahsoka Tano on this podcast, we're also pro representation. The rest of the internet doesn't always agree with that position. But
no.
Some sections.
There are a lot of examples when it comes to the fandom of this particular franchise, from the whole why is there a black stormtrooper thing to, everything else since.
And why does he have to be Lando's kid?
Right. But, within that, just representation in general, why does that topic obviously matter to you?
Right.
And what does it mean?
So it's an interesting feeling to and I get this with a lot of media, but to watch something that's had 9 movies and more than 9, is it 9, 10, 11 movies.
Yep.
Yes. 11 movies. And throughout these 11 movies to see no one or barely anyone who looks like you. So it makes you feel like, oh, well, this world exists and I love it, but can I exist in this world? Like, is there a space for me in this place? Like, I guess it's like looking at Star Wars and being like, oh, well, I guess there are no Black women in this universe. It's just like the one for a while, it was just Lando, and then it was Lando and Mace, and then and then it was Lando and Mace and Finn. There was that one random Black woman in Rogue One who, like, she's in the trailer and she's in that like really awesome gold outfit. And it seemed like she was going to be important to something, but then it turns out that like what we saw in the trailer was all the lines she had. And then, you know, finally in Rise of Skywalker, we get Janna, and she's, you know, there's potential for this character. She's amazing. She's another stormtrooper who's like deserted. And it's like, oh, what are they going to do? What's going to happen? But then it's like, all right, she might be Lando's daughter, maybe. Who knows? So all the Black people in Star Wars know each other. It's really, it can be a little painful. It's kind of like how for a while it didn't seem like girls could be Jedi or could actually like fight in Star Wars at all. And then when we got Rey, it was like, oh, well, you can do this. When we got Rey and when we got Jyn Erso and Ahsoka, it's like, oh no, you do have a spot. Like you can, like there are girls, a girl can be a Jedi, a girl can be just as strong as a boy. And it's not that you don't know that personally. It just feels like you're having to pull something from nothing in a way. And it just gets, I don't know, it just gets exhausting after a while.
Yeah.
It's almost like they were checking a box.
Right? Yeah.
Like,
yeah. And like there's a difference between like all representation isn't created equal. Like just putting that one woman in Rogue One and giving her like 3 lines that doesn't really count as anything. Like it like, yes, you put a Black woman in there, but what does she do? Nothing. She doesn't affect the plot. You can cut her whole part out. Like
if you get a bunch of kids on a playground playing Star Wars, none of them are going to be clamoring to be the random lady from the board meeting.
Right. The woman who was like, I don't think we should go find these Death Star plans. I think we should stay home. Nobody's going to want to be her. And it's, I've been thinking about this a lot recently though. Because growing up, I was really into like Disney princess stuff. And I've been like, as a kid, I was nearly every Disney princess for Halloween. I was Snow White, I was Belle, I was Cinderella, I was, and like I got all these costumes, and it never crossed my mind that I couldn't like wear these costumes because these characters didn't look like me until, honestly, until high school. I was just getting into like the anime convention scene. And I was talking to one of my friends who's white about what costumes we were going to wear to our local con. And I was like, oh, I could be like Sailor Moon, or I could do this. She was like, well, you can't be any of those characters because they're not Black. And I was like, wait, what? That's a what? And that was honestly the first time that that had ever crossed my mind. That like just because like I was excluded from a certain area of fandom because there weren't people in there who looked like me. And I didn't go through that until high school, but there are some other fans who, from the point that they entered their love for something, that's the kind of thing they had to face. So you leave all of those people hanging and like sitting at the margins unnecessarily just because you can't perceive them being a part of your world.
When you talked about the fact that there are 11 movies, and it's like, you know, a certain segment of the internet is just, you know, living in their parents' basement, angry white guy. Every time out, it has to be, you know, a white male as the protagonist, and will push back when it's a female or when it's a person of color. And it's just, It's a frustrating to hear because it's like, are you even a parent if you're making a comment like that? Because I have 2 girls, and so when they're watching a movie, they gravitate towards the female characters. When they're playing a video game, they gravitate towards the female characters, and it's just like I want to.
There's our picture for the podcast. Yeah, Dave froze.
Do that.
Oh, he's back. He's back. We didn't get the screenshot. Darn it. So you froze right when you said the girls wanting to be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you talk about you want a role model. You want somebody that you can look up to. You want somebody that you can identify with. Right. And there's an extra barrier to that if you don't have any kind of like if you don't have that in common with them, if you don't have the gender, if you don't have race or other characteristics, there is a barrier. And I love the fact that we could have you on and speak to that a little bit, because I think hopefully if there's anybody that would listen and maybe change their perspectives a little bit based on hearing the other side of that, will maybe do a little good.
That's what we always hope. And it's not that I couldn't identify with Luke or Han or Leia. It's just, over and over and over again, not seeing someone you can identify with, you start to, or who looks like you or shares your experience in some way. The other aspect of it is it starts to make you feel like you're weird. Like, oh, well, if I'm a girl who wants to be a Jedi, or if I'm a girl who wants to be a X-Wing pilot, or if I'm a girl who wants to be like the hero, then does that make me weird or odd, or am I not normal because I want to do these things that that I don't see people like me doing? And that's not true. Anybody can be the hero. Anybody can do these things. And that is the core of the Rebel alliance. Like, unlike the Empire, where everyone is, specifically humanoid, and even with Thrawn, who looks human but then is blue, he's kind of treated weird because it's like, you're not one of us. But when you look at the Rebels, it's like there are members of the rebellion who don't look human at all. It's like it's welcoming to everyone. So it feels like excluding people in the real world from the fandom doesn't follow the rules of the universe that they've set up and given to us.
That's a really good way of putting it, I think. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Did you guys have anything else you wanted to contribute to that?
No. I was just simply going to mention what Brittany was saying regarding representation. Just reminded me back to when Rogue One came out, and they're interviewing Diego Luna, and that Diego made the effort of showing his dad the movie. I believe that was the story, and because he wanted his dad to hear somebody who sounded like him in a Star Wars movie. Because it's one thing to say, okay, you have all the bad guys all have the British accents.
Yeah,
that's standard operating procedure. You got a bad guy in Star Wars, he has to sound British. Anyway, but you'd rarely have people who are away from the white norm in those movies. So the idea of presenting a hero that sounded like Diego, I think he said, wow, it was the first time he ever heard that, and kind of blew his mind a bit.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be the case, but it tends to be that whenever you're the first one, it surprises people because it's so uncommon.
Yeah. And it feels good to see yourself or hear yourself. You're like, oh, I'm in it. It's me. There I am. It's good.
And particularly when you're talking about science fiction fantasy, which allows you to create a character in any way you want. I mean, you could have Chewbacca could have looked 1,000 different ways, and the only inclination George had is, I'm basing him on my puppy.
Right.
And that's what he did. So that's where Chewbacca comes from. But besides that, he could look many thousands of different ways, within reason, because it's got to be a costume. But when you create a character, there's no inclination. I mean, George created Mace Windu because Samuel L. Jackson told him, "Hey, I want you to make in a Star Wars movie. I don't care if you put me in the background, if I'm just walking, as a set guy or I'm a technician, whatever. Just put me in your movie because I want to be in a Star Wars movie." And he said, "Okay, I'm gonna create a character," and created Mace Windu. And he was like, "Wait, you actually going to make me a Jedi?" And he even asked, I love the fact that he even said, "Look, can I get a purple lightsaber?" And George's like, "We'll see." And sure enough, he got a purple lightsaber. But it's that idea of you don't have to be bound by the limits of our society. Right. One of the, not to hype a different nerd franchise or geek franchise in Star Trek, that was one of the geniuses of Roddenberry was you're not bound by what is. You can show what can be. And I think Star Wars has that power to say, yeah, I mean, you can have Black women Jedi Masters. There's no reason why that should be a point of contention. But it's surprising how often in our world we get too hung up about a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah, a long, long time ago.
Yeah, to that point too, I think they sometimes feel like they're bound by what they've shown on the screen before. Like, well, this wasn't the way we filmed it in 1977 or whatever, so we have to stick with what we saw on camera in 1977, and it was a different world then.
It was, and also they don't even stick to that because can you find any of the original original versions of the original trilogy without all the added extra CGI bits? You can't. Yes. Now we have to put up with.
I do have it. I do have it on VHS sitting right over there.
Yes.
Y'all can come over. We can come watch it. But anyway, I'm sorry.
Yeah. He had to jump through hoops, though, right? I mean, like,
and
that's
it's VHS.
The point.
Like now you have to have a VCR. Like, can you find? I don't know any. I can't. You have a VCR, but if anybody wants to find a VCR, it's like if you didn't already have it, like now you can't even find a DVD player. Like,
right?
It's like
funny. Like my version of Star Wars has like those little squiggle lines from when you cut out the commercial breaks.
Yes,
that's my version of Star Wars. But yeah, no, this is funny. I like this line of discussion because we were wanting to talk a little bit about generational divide too. One of the things Dave Filoni talked about on one of the recent gallery episodes was just that, like how people grow up with a certain version of Star Wars, and that kind of affects how they look at the universe, like from that point forward. Right. So I wanted to get your personal Star Wars story. Like did you grow up on it, and what did you grow up on, and are you devoted to any particular parts of it?
So I was born in 1986. So at that point, Star Wars was like an absolute phenomenon. So there's no way you could exist in any kind of pop culture and not encounter some kind of Star Wars anything. Like I feel like my first encounter with Star Wars was the Muppet Babies Star Wars episode. So it's like that was my first like unofficial Star Wars thing. We never watched it in my house. I think I also saw like the Ewok Adventure movie with the little girl in like the 80s snowsuit. They used to show it on the Disney Channel. But the first Star Wars Skywalker Saga chronology movie I saw was The Phantom Menace.
Wow.
Yeah. In the movie theaters. It was a movie that I saw. And I just it didn't do it for me at that time. Like it didn't. I was like, I don't know. What did do it for me were the lightsaber battles. So from then on, I've been absolutely obsessed with the lightsaber fights throughout all of the movies. Because I think we got that great fight between Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan and Darth Maul. And Darth Maul was such a great villain, and just the tension of that fight until Maul starts doing that weird, like, scraping the side of the bottomless pit with his saber thing that was weird. But yeah, that's kind of I've tracked that through all the movies. Later, I kind of took the other movies piece by piece, and then before The Force Awakens came out, I had a friend who made me sit with him and watch all of the other movies and like that. Oh God, so the internet has some like order you need to watch them in.
Order.
Yeah.
Yeah, machete order. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we went through all of those, and I do not like the prequels at all. I don't like any of the prequels. I absolutely refuse to watch The Phantom Menace again. I can't. I just can't. I can't put myself through that. But I think overall, I like 2/3 of the sequel trilogy best of all. And I really like the original trilogy too, but I think they kind of knocked it out of the park with The Force Awakens. As like a comeback and a return to Star Wars after so long. And my favorite part of that is when Finn and Rey escape Jakku on the Falcon. Mm-hmm. I will literally just watch that scene on repeat. Like it's fantastic. I think it's amazing. And going back to the practical effects and having the creatures and just meeting these interesting new characters, and there was so much potential there. Whether that potential was handled well, ultimately, I will leave up to each individual person to decide. I have my own opinions about how the Skywalker saga ended. But I also really liked, The Last Jedi. It's one of those movies that I can't watch a lot because it's such an emotional roller coaster for me. Because it's a movie about failure. Literally everybody's plan and every moment fails over and over again in that movie. In the same way that like everybody's plans keep failing in Empire Strikes Back. But yeah, I think to my detriment, The Phantom Menace being the first Star Wars movie that I officially saw almost knocked me away from Star Wars completely. Because it just was not, it's some people love it. I know some people who love it, but I am not those people.
That's interesting. I've talked about this before, and I was born in '73, so I remember seeing the original three, growing up, and so when it got to be 1999, and there was a new Star Wars movie in the theater after do the math, Aaron, 16 years, it was like, and also knowing what that backstory was going to be. The people who who are my age who are complaining about especially the Phantom Menace. I'm not saying this was your argument, but the people who are complaining where it's all about politics. It's like, did you not read anything that was given to us in that desert time? Of no star. It's like that was the backstory, and you're going to see the backstory. It's going to be a political intrigue, but I've always said, that being said, they're all my children. I love them all, but but episode 2 needs to go back to school, and episode 3 needs to get a job. But so as a writer, because this has always been also kind of a back and forth that we've had with several people, because there's no gray area about how people like how Rian Johnson handled Luke Skywalker's story. They either think it was the absolute correct way to go, and there are others who thought, that is not the Luke that I knew. And both, it's such a dear character to people. So I'm not saying one is right or wrong. However, the one I agree with, I think it makes for a more interesting story to take the hero and show them, like you said, as failed. So as a writer, what do you think about how they took Luke Skywalker's character in The Last Jedi?
I liked it. It's difficult to watch because it's hard to reconcile the Luke that we know at the end of Return of the Jedi with the Luke that we see in The Last Jedi. And And I think it should be, because he's gone through a lot in that 30 years. You know, for all he knew, he was the only Jedi around, so he had to rebuild this thing from nothing. And especially with what we see of the little bit that Yoda and Obi-Wan kind of did get to teach him in the original trilogy, and then the way we see the Jedi in operation in the prequels, trying to rebuild that is gonna, like, that trying to get back to what they were before the Jedi all fell in Order 66 is a bad idea. So I can see how somebody who's so full of hope and is so sure of like following these teachings that he was given is the right thing to do, and then to have all of that fall to pieces because he had a moment where the rules as he knew them said he should take care of this potential threat in his nephew, and in that moment he pretty much destroyed everything. I can see how somebody could want to disappear in that moment, the way Luke wanted to disappear. And I think that seeing the journey, seeing him get back to himself and get back to the Luke that we all know him to be and the Luke that everyone else knew him to be by the end of the movie, like that felt really good. Like that last non-fight between Luke and Kylo is just like, it felt good. It was like it. Mm-hmm. In that moment where he sees Leia again, it's like we all see him as the Luke we know him to be. So it's like a reunion for all of us. And it sucks that we lose him in that moment, but we didn't really. So that's how, that's why I'm like all in on that. It's hard to see the hero have fallen so far from what we know them to be. But it does happen when your whole, like your faith and your whole worldview is shaken. And it looks like you were the cause of the destruction of everything you believed in and that you were trying to build because you made a really horrible mistake.
Well, and I really like that that last, like you said, non-fight. And that was a good way of putting it, because it's actually Luke being the most Jedi of any Jedi, because Yoda saying, knowledge and defense, never for attack. And that's what he was doing.
Right. And that's how he won against Palpatine. That's how he saved Vader too, by not fighting. Like at the end of Return of the Jedi, he doesn't fight, and that's what saves everyone. So it's somehow, like, somewhere in that 30 years, he lost his way. And he tried to eliminate his nephew when he probably didn't need to. And I think that's the linchpin moment right there. And because we see that moment from Kylo's perspective and from Luke's perspective, we get to see, it makes it even more heartbreaking because we know that Luke regretted it as soon as he drew his lightsaber, but we also know the hurt that Ben must have felt seeing that someone he loved and trusted and believed in was ready to eliminate him because of some like dark feelings he had been having. So it's just a really sad moment for everybody all around. It's just really terrible. And then, he becomes Kylo Ren and then slaughters the entire, new Jedi Order that Luke was building. So it's like, not only was Luke responsible for the turning and the loss of his nephew, he's responsible for the loss of all of these young lives that he was responsible for.
So would you say Force Awakens then is your favorite, or do you have a different favorite?
The Last Jedi is my favorite.
That's all right.
Yeah, and then I'll say Return of the Jedi, The Force Awakens, Empire, A New Hope, Rogue One, and then the other ones just kind of fall at the bottom, with the Phantom Menace all the way at the bottom. Solo somewhere in the mix of all of those, like, not very good ones.
I figured Return of the Jedi might be high because of your exposure to the Ewoks at an early age.
Right. Yeah. Well, you know what? It's not the Ewoks to do it for me. It's like Leia finally gets like stuff to do in Return of the Jedi. Like, she really gets to like join in on the fight, and that's what I like about it most. I'd waited so long for her to do something and like to do more than just be like at the comms and be like, I'm giving other people orders, and I'm just like, oh, this doesn't feel right. Like, I was waiting for her to do something, and so she takes some action, and we get to see her do some stuff. Finally, we get to see a woman do some stuff in Star Wars with Leia in Return of the Jedi. So,
well, you mentioned Leia a couple times. Would she be your favorite character, or are there others?
Leia's my favorite. With Rey as a close second. But Leia's my favorite because she has my heart, because she's both princess and warrior, and that's like that is what I like. I like somebody, like, I like sword fights and I like princess stuff. So I appreciate a princess who's battle trained and battle tested, battle ready.
Did you like the reveal in the new movie that she had a lightsaber and that she had trained with Luke and some of that stuff?
I did and I didn't. It made me I was happy that we had some confirmation that she got to actually cultivate and develop her force powers. I hated that it was like, oh, and then she just stopped. Then it's like, oh yeah, this thing that everybody's been waiting for, that y'all all wanted to see. Yeah, it happened off screen. Sorry.
Well, and it also kind of seemed like, oh, I've got to stop because I'm going to have a baby.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's like, okay, she stopped so she could save her son's life, but then because she used her force powers, her son got stabbed before we knew that Rey could heal people. So he almost died because he heard her call his name, and it was like, you started great and then it just got muddy. It got weird. It's like, good start. A for effort, D for execution. So that's how I felt about it. But that's why I love there is another story from the first from a certain point of view.
So kind of on I mean, you can't talk about the project, but you said you have 41 other writers, and I'd imagine, and you don't have to answer this, I'm just speaking out loud here, I imagine you have to be in some conversation so that you're not stepping on each other's toes, or maybe contradicting one another or anything like that. And that's kind of one of my arguments with the sequel trilogy, is I really think that that it didn't seem like there was much collaboration on the overall arc of this is point A to point B, and how you guys want to do it. It seems like they wrote themselves into corners. That's my go-to line on this podcast.
Yeah.
So I'd agree with you. It's like, George Lucas, in the original 6 movies, he was the one that was writing the story. He was in control of the story, whereas the sequel trilogy, we had, a bunch of different hands in the pot, and it just kind of it gets convoluted. Collaboration is wonderful, but it can also
I think it's most jarring between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. I think you can kind of like follow some threads through from Force Awakens into The Last Jedi and be like, I didn't expect that to happen that way, but we'll see how it like shakes out in the end. So it's like it tracks there, but then when you get to The Rise of Skywalker, it's like everything falls off the rails.
And the doors were wide open at the end of The Last Jedi. It was like, you could have gone literally anywhere. Rian Johnson left it so it was like, story can continue however you want to. It's not like at the end of Empire where it's like, okay, we got to go find Han. we got to, figure out this whole Luke Vader, father son thing.
Right.
So, but here they could have gone anywhere, and they did. It's kind of like they just scribbled on a paper. So, I mean, I like the movie,
Yeah.
but it was. You're making me realize I probably needed a beer when I watched it. So, however, I will say this. This is kind of a funny story. When I saw The Last Jedi, it was 3 days after I had rotator cuff surgery, and I literally had pain meds injected into my neck. I had this stuff just constantly being pumped into me. And I remember when watching The Last Jedi, I remember having the conscious thought of, am I enjoying this? Because it was the most different Star Wars thing I've ever seen in my life. And I was like, am I enjoying this? Okay, yeah, I think I am. I don't think it's the pain meds, but yeah, it's totally different. So, but let's talk about old farts, Generation X people like me. I've got this little Android guy, the Gregler, who says, "Get off my lawn." We wanted to talk to you a little bit about the difference between the generations in Star Wars, and I actually experienced this a little bit after The Force Awakens, because we took our niece, who Alexis was at that time 20 maybe, but it was like right after The Force Awakens, she was mad. She wanted to know more. I want to know more about Kylo Ren. I want to know what happens next. I want to know what happened to Finn. I want to know about all these things. And it's like, I'm sitting there going, hey, I had to wait, 3 years between movies, and then I had to wait 16 until there was a new one. I couldn't go and just pull the video off of my, shelf and see, is Vader Luke's dad, and so I guess I'll throw that little story out, just talk about, and it says in our notes, you're a millennial. I still really don't know what a millennial is, but do you what are your perceptions of how your generation and the old farts like me, how we handle Star Wars? We've kind of alluded to some of this, but what's your experience been with that?
It's so, like I said, my first encounter with Star Wars proper was with The Phantom Menace. Yeah. And before that, it was like, just little bits and pieces here and there. So it's like it.
And by the way, don't be afraid of offending me either. You can't offend me, so you can make fun of old people like me. That is just fine.
No. It's just like So when we came into Star Wars, it was already huge. Like, it wasn't like we got to, ease in and like, oh, let me just dip my toe into Star Wars and see what it is. So we've had to kind of, to a certain extent, come in and be ready to go hard for Star Wars. It's like you're either a Star Wars fan or you just are somebody who happens to like Star Wars. And if you just like Star Wars, you need to sit over there. You can't sit with the fans. So it kind of gave it a lot more pressure, but I think those of us who were, I think the kids who came into Phantom Menace, so people who were younger than me, I have a brother who's 8 years younger than me. So kids who came into the Phantom Menace were probably like, yes, Star Wars, give me the toys. I want to do pod racing. It's the best. But then, I'm just getting into I was 13 when the Phantom Menace came out. So it's like that age when I'm just starting to feel too cool for stuff. I was getting ready to go to high school. So I was like, what is this? I don't think I like Star Wars. So it was
Star Wars political science. Yeah.
Right. So it's we were coming in on a legacy already instead of being part of the people at the ground level. And it's we still had to wait for stuff. We had to wait for stuff to get resolved over time. We could pick up the original trilogy and just watch it straight through, but we had to wait for all of the prequel stuff, just like everybody else.
But back in my day, we didn't have the internet.
Right. Well, we were just getting into the internet. So then, the other thing is we had, it became easier and easier for us to share fan fiction and fan theories. And it's become incredibly easy now to share fan art. There's the Wikipedia, stuff is literally streaming immediately. So you don't even have to like go to Blockbuster the first week it comes out and hope that like everybody hasn't already taken all the copies so you can't watch it again. You don't have to like hook up the two VCRs to each other so you can like
Copy one to
copy one to the other. So when you return it to Blockbuster, you still have your own copy. You don't have to wait for it to come on TV and then have to sit through commercial breaks. Like you can literally stream these things near immediately. Like you can like a kid who only saw the sequel trilogy can just sit down, decide tomorrow they want to watch every single Star Wars movie that has been made except for the Ewok Adventure and the Christmas special, and just sit in front of their TV and watch it, or start it on the TV and then watch it on their phone and then watch it on their iPad. And like it just blows my mind how like with us like as we each encounter Star Wars in each generation, and how technology has made it easier to connect in a way, and just to find your tribe, find your people, to talk about it, to come up with theories, to argue about what you like and what you don't like in both healthy and unhealthy ways. And it's I don't know, it feels like it's become more accessible, and
but
like
daunting. Like
there's
to
so
that
much
point,
more to watch.
yeah, to that point that you made earlier. I mean, like Aaron, it's funny. He just watched the MCU like beginning to end. He hadn't watched any of those movies, and it's like, all right, now I got to watch like 25 movies, just to get caught up.
Which funny story about that, Dave. One of them, I can't remember which one was, but one of them was on TV the other day. I was like, hey, I'm going to watch this again. I think it may have been Age of Ultron. Started watching it again. I was like, did I see this movie? I couldn't remember anything.
To blur together.
So, anyways, keep on going. I'm sorry.
No, I think that's you know, to your point, that's where we're at now with Star Wars. And like even for the three of us, we've talked about this, how the Clone Wars series took us a long time to get into.
Yeah.
We didn't watch it right away, and we all circled back around to it after the fact, because it's like there's a lot there. There's so many episodes, and there's just so much material to go through. And I know that like we all hold the original stuff on like this pedestal, right? But I wonder, like for y'all's generation, do you still have that reverence for the original movies, or is that something that like Gen X keeps pushing on y'all, and you're just like, okay, come on?
I think we do, because the prequels were so not good. It's not like we came into it and it was like, oh, these new Star Wars movies that came out were like excellent and they were so great. It was like, and like even it's wild how watching the prequels and then watching the original trilogy, even the like effects in the original somehow look more organic and look better than the prequels. I think part of that is
video gamey.
Yeah, and part of that might be because we were looking at the world, you know, pre-huge intergalactic war, so everything is still like shiny. It's not as gritty and dusty and rough as things are in the time period of the original trilogy. But I don't know. I guess I would be, if I was starting with The Force Awakens, I might be less reverent of the original trilogy, because The Force Awakens looks great. It's a really well done movie. The characters are great. Yeah, I think I might be a little less in awe of what George did with the first three movies, but because I'm coming off the Phantom Menace, I'm like, oh yeah, you know what? Those can stay over there. We'll just forget they ever happened. I watch the Clone Wars series and let that be it. I look it up on the Wookiee and get the plot summary or something.
You know, what you mentioned, you know, you alluded to something earlier that made me think of, you know, when I grew up, you know, we had the three movies
Mm-hmm.
and that was it. If your friend got Bantha Trex, the mailer on that was typed up and everything. But then, when you get into the 90s and suddenly Star Wars books explode. We had an episode about the EU and so the old fart here was I was really resistant to the EU because it wasn't the Star Wars that I recognized. It wasn't, it wasn't within bookends of, 4 to 6.
Right.
I didn't have anything against anything they were doing. It was like, I don't know, it seemed, like I said, it seemed kind of like fan fiction. So I wonder if kids growing up with, they didn't have the movies, but they had the books that they read and were really into. So then, maybe they're a little bit more accepting to, changes in storyline, changes to, different locales and things like that because they read about all these. I don't know. Is that maybe?
Well, one thing you see with the people who grew up with the books in the EU is that they have a serious love for all of those stories and characters to the point where, the official story going in a completely different way is jarring to them sometimes. And one thing about the EU is that at the time it was kind of like the Wild West. Anybody who wanted to write it almost could write in it. So you have all these different like continuity lines. So it's like sometimes Han and Leia have no kids, sometimes they have 5 kids, sometimes they have 3 kids, and all these different stories that go in different directions. So you could really find your favorite storyline for your favorite characters and just follow that through in a way that was very, I'm sure, really gratifying. But then sometimes with the with the new canon books overruling all of the EU stuff, you see a lot of people who are resistant to that. But one thing they are doing is they're trying to bring in more EU characters. Like Thrawn came out of the EU.
Yeah.
And they brought him into they brought him out of Legends territory and put him in the new canon, and people love that character. There's a new Thrawn book out. I think if it's not out yet, then it's coming out. And so I think it's like whatever your entry point to Star Wars, you either hold on to that tightly and you love it dearly to the point where you don't want it to change from that, or you just are a bit more flexible if your entry point is terrible, like mine was.
Oh. So Fredo has to bounce help his brother move. But do you have anything you want to ask Fredo before you have to?
Before you leave us so unceremoniously.
I know. Needs must. Guywood truck must be ready and willing to answer the call.
Y'all have
fun? Yeah, y'all have fun. Talk amongst yourselves. I will give you yet another topic. No, just have a good one, y'all, and I'll see y'all later.
All right.
So, and that's the other thing that I, talk about the generation. It's interesting. You said you really dug The Force Awakens because there were people who were really turned off. The running line was that it was a rehash of A New Hope. And to me, and I was a teacher for 19 years, so it was, to me it was like, okay, Star Wars hasn't been a thing, hasn't been on the big screen for a long time. And there was adverse, I know Dave, you're a big prequels fan, but there was adverse reactions to the prequels, and like I said, it's been a while since it's been on the screen. And so it's like, if you're going to reintroduce this, or you're going to introduce a new topic to kids, you've got to put it into a context that makes sense to them. So it made sense to me that JJ put him on a desert planet, that you saw, that there were these things that looks familiar and things like that. So along those lines, what was your thoughts about The Mandalorian? What do you think about that series?
God, I love The Mandalorian. One, because it gave us a look at people outside of the usual suspects, And I love that throughout the entire series, nobody we encounter really knows what Jedi are. They don't know about the Force or Yoda or anything. Like when the child uses the Force, they're like, "Baby, do the magic hand thing." Like, I don't know what that is, but keep doing it. It's really that it serves to expand the world and make it feel bigger in a way that I think they thought they were doing with the prequels and the sequels, but they didn't actually achieve because they made everyone related to each other. And I love that Jon Favreau let each individual director put their own touch on each episode. So, it's the overarching feel of a Western with the whole lone wolf and cub feel from, Japanese manga and stuff. And but then we get these little like glimpses of other people's perspectives and ideas, and like the finale with Taika Waititi and the way he like handles comedy and tragedy in the same sometimes in like like consecutive beats with such a deft hand. Like I love The Mandalorian. I watched everything. Yeah, it's just great. It's great.
Did you know there was going to be a Baby Yoda when you started watching it?
No, I didn't.
So what was your reaction at the end of that first episode then when you saw Baby Yoda?
We flipped out. I was like, "Yo, what? Oh my gosh!" Like I did not. I didn't see it coming at all.
And did you see the Mardi Gras meme of when you said, "Baby, do the hand thing," and then they show Baby Yoda with all the beads?
Right.
Yeah.
I did not.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's such a good show. I'm very happy that they finished filming season 2 before everything shut down. So we'll probably get the October season 2 drop that they promised us. And then watching the gallery episodes where they had all the behind the scenes stuff and the volume.
Yeah, that is so cool.
It's incredible. And the way they talk about it is great. And all the people, they got like all of the smartest people to work on this one thing. And so you came out with something absolutely brilliant that looks and feels like Star Wars without feeling like a low budget copy of what we're used to with the movies. Yeah. So it's hard to do a story outside of the main one and not make it feel like a knockoff.
Yeah.
But they did it successfully with Rogue One, where we got a bunch of people outside of what we usually see, and we really cared about them, and they made us care about a bunch of people who were going to die in the end. It's like we knew they weren't going to make it, and still.
I'd love to get your opinion on this because, like, right now, like, I feel like this is the best acted Star Wars has ever been. Like, if you consider, like, the sequel trilogy, like you mentioned, Rogue One, Mandalorian, this is some of the best acting that we've seen. But to me, again, I'm not an actor, so I'd love to get your take on that as an actor.
Yeah. I mean, I think the original trilogy had some really great acting in it. One, they cast really good personalities. Harrison Ford's Han Solo, it's just like it's so effortless for him in the original trilogy. And the same thing with like Billy D. Williams as Lando. Alec Guinness hated his part, so that take that as you will. Mark Hamill did really great things as he like grew in the role of Luke, and I think Leia did too. But I think acting has changed a lot between the 70s and early 80s and now. One, because like filmmaking has changed. cameras are more high definition, so they're less forgiving of stuff. And like they really got some amazing, they combined really brilliant younger actors with really well trained, more veteran actors, especially in the sequel trilogy. And then in bringing back the originals, these are people who knew these characters like intimately. So it's not, you know, you're when you bring back Harrison Ford to do The Force Awakens, this is somebody who embodied this character for what, 30 years plus. So it's not, you know, the way he handled Han then is going to inform everything that he's done over the years. And I honestly think Harrison Ford in The Force Awakens was some of the best recent Harrison Ford acting we have gotten. And being a new actor who's going into a new Star Wars thing is very different from being one of the original actors who was in A New Hope way back when everybody thought that movie was going to flop, to the point that George Lucas and Steven Spielberg didn't even go to the premiere.
Yeah.
They just went on a trip because they were like, this is just going to be a flop. So it's like it's not, whereas before it was like, oh, you know, I'm going to be in something. It's called Star Wars. Now it's like, yo, I'm going to be in Star Wars. And they're putting fans in Star Wars. Yeah, I think writing has gotten better. Special effects have gotten better. The whole thing with The Mandalorian that they talk about that made it easier for the actors is that they weren't performing on a green screen. They were performing in a space where it looked like they were really in that environment.
Yeah.
So you of course you can use your imagination and be like, oh, well, you know, stuff is over there, stuff is over here. But when you don't, you can focus more.
You can naturally react to it.
Yeah. And you can, instead of having to have like one part of your brain trying to remember where like all of these imaginary things are located, and the other part of your brain being focused on like what you're supposed to be doing in the scene, remembering all of your lines, what where you place this prop, where you place that prop, what you were doing here, what you were doing there. You can focus your entire brain on your performance and just give like a really real, visceral, moving performance of something. It's great.
You brought up something that made me think about, again, our topic about generations. You know, now the Star Wars stuff that's coming out now, the sequel trilogy, the Mandalorian, anything that's being made, you know, Rogue One, they're being directed and acted by fans.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the original trilogy, these were people who got a gig. You know, it was they liked their gig. You know, and even the prequel trilogy, I mean, Hayden and Natalie were not that old, so they didn't really grow up with Star Wars. Again, it was a gig, but now it's like all the directors who are like, oh, I get to direct Star Wars, like you said, you know, and the actors who grew up with it as a kid. Do you think that's making a difference, or am I
absolutely
overselling it?
No, I think it absolutely is. Like, for example, like in The Mandalorian, they actually, for the scenes with stormtroopers, they brought in members of the 501st to be stormtroopers in that. Like, that's not something you could do back when Star Wars first started. Like, you couldn't be like, oh, just call up, 100 people who've made their own movie grade stormtrooper costumes and tell them to show up on set so they can just fill out our stormtrooper numbers. Like, that's not something you could do then. And like all of these actors, as they get like when they find out they're going to be in a Star Wars movie, they're just as excited as any like the three of us would be if somebody was like, hey, you're going to be cast in a Star Wars thing. Like, we would be thrilled. And so, it also, Star Wars has a look, a feel, like we all come in with an understanding of the world already. So we don't have to buy in on the same level that people with the original trilogy had to. Like, we don't have to imagine like what Luke and Leia had to go through. We don't have to imagine like what this intergalactic war looks like. We don't have to imagine like just completely imagine what space battles would look like. What it would look like to like fight with a lightsaber in this world, because we can literally just pick up the movies and watch it. We know, we already have all that context in our heads. So, you know, that's something you bring with you on set or when you write or when you do anything for Star Wars. Like it's already there. So nobody has to teach you about Star Wars. We already know. Like, yeah, we already know.
So I did want to ask you one question about your resume, which was posted on your website, and it mentioned that you're rapier trained.
Yes. I am actually
I know that you love lightsaber battles due to this conversation. So are those tied in together? Are we going to see a future lightsaber battle from you at some point?
I'd love to. I had this idea to do like, oh God, this is going to make me sound like a huge nerd. I had this idea a couple years ago to do something called Lightsaber Shakespeare, where you would take the some of the like famous fights from Shakespeare's plays and put them up, except the characters had lightsabers.
Oh, awesome.
And you know, if you look at the way different characters fight with their lightsabers, each one is usually based on an actual like sword fighting style. Like Dooku is very rapier like.
Right.
Most people just swing them like sabers. Rey swings her lightsaber like she's swinging a baseball bat because she's used to using a bow or a staff to fight. So yeah, I would love to be. Look, have you
seen the saber fighting clubs?
Yes. There's one that does a lot of events. I was at a convention in Seattle a couple years ago, and I got to do a workshop with them where they taught us how to make up our own lightsaber fights. It's the best day of my life. Best day. Best day. And it's, you know, I dream of the day where I can get like a combat grade lightsaber, because they sell them. They're not cheap, but you know, so me and somebody else can like bang our lightsabers together and film it, and it'll be awesome. Or maybe one day I'll actually get to, you know, play a Jedi in something, and
there you go.
Really get to swing a lightsaber. Also looking forward to going to Galaxy's Edge again and making a lightsaber. Because
you have to do it.
That process, it looks incredible.
Yeah, no, I did it with my son. You have to do it. It's like spiritual and just amazing.
I was supposed to do that in May.
Well, look, I haven't done it either. So I'm right there with you.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's expensive, right? And like, so, you know, it's like, oh, the mouse is always going to get his money, but it's so much fun. It's so cool, and I don't have any regrets at all.
So another thing we wanted to ask you about, because we talk a lot about on this show the relationship of the fans and the people who create, you know, the content. How do you describe your relationship that relationship within your own work? I mean, do you bounce ideas off other people? Do you take critiques and after the fact use them to adjust going forward? How's that interaction work for you?
So the main fan I listen to is me. And because, you know, you can get stuck bouncing ideas off of people for eternity and never actually end up with anything. My husband is also a huge Star Wars person, so we actually bounce ideas off of each other and often have in-depth, high-level Star Wars storyline, character development conversations, and like argue things down and talk things out. You know, as always, when you're writing, you can bounce stuff off of your editor. Your editor is there to make the story better, and to like they're there to help you make sure that you write the best, most true thing you can. And whenever you work within an already existing universe, there's always going to be somebody over you who has like final say. um so it's I listen to when I go into this, I think about the conversations I've had with friends, um and things that I wish I could have done. And I try to, as with all of my writing, I think about what 13-year-old me or like 10-year-old me would like to see. So I try to write for that little girl that I was. And that usually leads me very on a clear, straight and narrow path.
Well, it's nice to hear that you have the same sexy conversations with your husband
Right.
that Dave and I have with our spouses.
How can you not? Like, how can you not? It's great. And it's good to like be able to have somebody to bounce this stuff off of. So it's not just rattling around in your brain.
I'll never forget, Dave and Kate and Brittany and I at Port Orleans talking about Star Wars Rebels, just like adults do, so.
Right. I mean, I think that's the best part of being an adult. You can have these like high level conversations. And I'm friends with the other writers at Black Nerd Problems. We have a Slack channel, and all we do is have high level nerd conversations about everything. So it's just, I think that's the best part of having a partner who is also a nerd and in your same fandom. You can pull apart all your favorite stuff together and put it back together.
Love
it's
it.
A beautiful thing.
So besides Star Wars, and we won't keep you too much longer, but besides Star Wars, what other kind of things do you nerd out over?
Of course, all things Disney, because I grew up during the Disney animation renaissance and the early days of the Disney Channel.
So, by the way, what do you all think about retheming of Splash Mountain to Princess and the Frog? We're going to get
fantastic.
Yeah,
it's the best because that movie and that ride are extremely racist. I have seen parts of the movie. It's so much worse than you could imagine.
Oh, I grew up.
Oh, yeah.
We had the book, and I watched the movie too. And it wasn't until I was like, gosh, I think I was probably in middle school or high school when I was like, that's not a very good thing to. That's not really cool. It was like it started dawning on me. I was like,
right. It's like,
so hats off to Disney though with Splash Mountain. It's like they took out all of the overt stuff, but yeah, it's just. But I think making it a Princess and the Frog thing, that'll be a cool New Orleans thing.
Brilliant. I literally, like, before they announced it, I literally just said to my husband, if Disney knew what they were doing, they would retheme Splash Mountain as the Princess and the Frog.
And have you
right there?
And have you seen the picture that they gave to Leah Chase, to Dookie Chase? Because she was the inspiration of Tiana. But you go in the front door, into the dining room, and they have a thing there. It's a cell, I believe, from the movie, and signed and everything, and a nice note to Leah Chase. So that's really cool.
That's so beautiful.
So I'm sorry, Disney. You're all things Disney. What else do you geek out over?
Anime. I've been getting back into like my old the anime that I used to watch in like middle school and high school. So like Sailor Moon, Cardcaptor Sakura, a lot of like cute magical girl stuff. I am a huge fantasy reader. I just nerd out over all of the things. Electronics, engineering, robots. I'm a Shakespeare nerd too, completely and utterly. Love Shakespeare. Have since I was a kid. Yeah, I'm trying to. I guess it would be a shorter list to be like, what don't I nerd out over? I'm not the biggest Star Trek fan, but
there are some Star Wars. It's the original Star Wars trilogy written in the Shakespearean style. Yeah,
Yep.
I've got those.
We have those too. They've done all of them, I think. They've done the prequels, definitely. They've done, I think, if the Rise of Skywalker one isn't out yet, I think it's coming out soon. So, yeah. So, yep, that's the meeting of my two of my fandoms. So, but yeah, I can talk people's ear off about a whole bunch of stuff, which is comes in handy sometimes, but not.
I mean, I think your idea of Shakespeare with lightsabers is a winner.
Right. I just
agree.
need to, as soon as people can get close to each other again, I'll start trying to make it happen. Yeah, but I'm trying to think, is there any like huge fandom that I have missed? No, I was excited when Disney bought Star Wars because then I only had to go to one park.
There you go.
Right.
Yeah.
There you go.
So.
Well, cool. So you want to tell people how they can find you on social media and your webpage and stuff like that? And
yes. So if you would like to find me on Instagram or Twitter, my handle is Brittany X, BRITTANYACTS, like the actor. I'm that on Twitter and Instagram. If you want to go to my website, it's my name, Brittany, BRITTANY, N as in Nicole, because I was born in the 80s, Williams.com. So that's BrittanyNWilliams.com. That's my website. As always, you can find me writing at Black Nerd Problems. That's blacknerdproblems.com. And yeah, that's it. Don't come visit my house. That's fine. Just see you online.
And from a certain point of view, The Empire Strikes Back.
Yes. From a certain point of view, The Empire Strikes Back drops on November 10th. It's a bunch of really fantastic writers who love Star Wars. Yeah, that is all I am allowed to say at the moment. But more news to come.
The restraint that we have shown, I have to say, we respected that because I want to ask so much about that process. And sometime we'll have to have an off the record conversation.
Right.
Yeah. So, but no, we want to thank you so very much for being on here, and it's so awesome to, I knew that you and Daniel Jose Older were in the New Orleans area. I didn't know Claudia Gray. This is now becoming like Star Wars Vienna,
right? Lucasfilm South.
That's right. That's right. There you go. So, well, cool. Well, Dave, anything else for the good of the order?
I'm all good on this, and I wanted to say congrats to you, Brittany. Awesome gig. I can't wait to read it.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. It was great talking to y'all.
I'm gonna ask, can you say how excited you were when you found out who you were going to be writing about?
Well, I can say we got to pick. So.
Oh, okay, cool. All right.
So nice. I got to tell them who I wanted to write, and it was great.
Did you have to fight anybody over it?
No, I didn't. But the only rule was somebody in Empire. That's it.
Sweet.
So
awesome.
Well, all right, folks. Well, thank you again for this awesome conversation, and we can't wait for the next one.
Yes.
And maybe a few in between. But for those of you listening, you can find us, remember, on Twitter and on Podbean and on Apple Podcasts and on Google Podcasts and on Facebook. If you Google Who Dat Jedi podcast, you're probably not going to find too many things in your search results. So, but with that, we will say Who Dat, and everybody have a great week.
McConkey.